Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Revert Corner. Today we are talking about, does money matter? Faith and finance. And we are joined as well by a very special guest. And I'm also joined by my co-host Karl again, who was absent last week. Karl, how's everything going with you?
Alhamdulillah, great to be back.
Good to be back. And we're just going to start off the episode by introducing our guest. So we have, I'll introduce you a little bit, Akhi, just so,
Sure.
as far as I'm aware, and you can fill us in with the missing details. You are from Holland. You are a revert to Islam, and you have been studying in Medina for many years. I believe you have a master's in Islamic finance from Medina University, as well as Malaysia. I'm not sure the exact university, and you're currently in the PhD program in Jamia Islamiyah in Medina University. So if you can just fill us in maybe with some of the blanks there and let us know a little bit about yourself, perhaps how you came to Islam and how you ended up studying in Medina.
All right. First of all, Karim and Karl, thank you very much for this unique opportunity to be here with you, and hopefully it will be a very beneficial podcast today. Yeah, my name is Ilyas. I was born as Eric. Yes, I'm from Holland, 41 years old. And Alhamdulillah, 22 years ago, I started to study my first bachelor's in my country, and there I actually started to have conversations with basically Muslims about very core principles of life when it comes to family, when it comes to Tawheed, the pure belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there they confronted me by saying, actually, well, it's good for you that you're Dutch, but your views are actually exactly the same as Islam preaches. So the Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, the awareness of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was already there when I was a child and had kind of a role in my life. And when I was 18, 19, I got in touch, alhamdulillah, with Islam. I became a Muslim within 4 months after that, or 5 months. I was guided by one of the previous students of the Qura University in Mecca. So that's that. Then I started working, and when I was 25, I got the opportunity to study at the Islamic University of Medina. So I left my life in Holland, although alhamdulillah, actually I had a very good job there as a consultant, but I left everything. Went there, spent 2 years, 3 years in studying Arabic, of course, because I started with zero. And alhamdulillah, 16, 17 years later, I'm still there doing my PhD in Islamic social finance and how to contribute to the socio-economic development of Muslims by using Islamic methods. So that's basically my field. That's it, dear brother.
Amazing. And so, mashallah, you're now 16 years into studying in Medina University, you said, or 16 or 17, was it?
Yeah, 17, a little more than 16, 17, 16, 17, yes.
MashaAllah. So, just before we, continue on to our ayah and hadith of the episode, I believe Matt is on the way, so we'll hopefully get him. I just spoke to him, but just in the meantime, then I think Karl, you had a bit of a question, maybe to kind of give a bit of an introduction to the episode and lay the groundwork.
Quite a few, yeah. So I was thinking when I became Muslim. I don't think I knew there was anything called Islamic finance, but maybe it was because there's many years ago. And now I guess awareness is more even among non-Muslims seeing Islamic finance options on the market. And I suppose the big question is, what is Islamic finance all about?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Karl, for this question. What's Islamic finance about? Well, first of all, Islamic finance is actually one of the parts of Islam. First of all, the Islam as a religion, as it's all, the Sharia, is not purely either a spiritual thing or a worship towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. The Islam is a complete religion in which every single component is explained to us. Islamic finance is a part of the fiqh related to transactions, and the more bigger topic, Islamic economics. Islamic economics is all about how to preserve the maqsad, the objectives of Islam, to preserve the wealth of the Muslims. So that's basically related to Islamic economics. And under there, we have, of course, let's say Islamic business, and we have Islamic finance. Finance is and business are of course very highly related with each other, but it's more than only finance. Now, what's Islamic finance about, and what makes it different than, for example, conventional finance? Well, if you look, brothers and sisters, if you look at conventional finance, then actually what we have is that the banking sector and everything which is related and associated to that is an external part of the real economy. It means they're not really involved in creating services or products, and neither are they taking any risk or providing any service actually to the community, rather than only giving liquidity to buy something or to start up your own business. So now, as you all have seen, of course, in your lives, people get into debt, and the only thing actually that is based on is riba, is interest. Although, by the way, we'll discuss that maybe later in this episode or another episode, that riba is not only interest. But getting back to the topic, Islamic finance is based on certain principles. Now, one of them, of course, as you know, is that riba, so in this context mostly, interest is not allowed. So it's not allowed to borrow somebody money and then to ask additional amount of money upon that in order for him to pay it back. It must be equal. That's the first point. What's also very important, now we're going to start talking about entrepreneurship, is that, for example, Islamic banks, of course, I'm talking here from the principles of the Islam, not talking about the practical situation. But in Islam, it's very important, the POS. The POS means the profit and loss sharing. That means that if we brothers, for example, we three of us would start a project or we start a business, then all of us have to cover or bear a kind of risk in that project. And it doesn't mean that, for example, one of us has the capital and he doesn't bear any risk in the project at all. No, he also should bear a component of risk, and it should be shared. So it's equal, because equality in Islam is extremely important. Yes, and this is actually also, Karl, an interesting point here as well. We can see it with brothers when we're selling or buying, for example, cars or secondhand products amongst each other, is that every transaction that we have to do, that we make in Islamic economics, must be clear. We call it in Arabic al-gharar. Al-gharar, the uncertainty cannot be there. So it's not allowed for me to come to you with a box and say, hey, Karl, buy this box for me for you can have it for $100 or £100, and you don't know what's in there. Or you know what's in there, but it's not specified. You don't know whether it's an iPhone 15 Max Pro, for example, or the 16 Max Pro, or anything of the sort. It must be extremely clear what it is, and also what is the counter value. So what is the exact amount that's going to be paid. And a lot of brothers and sisters make mistakes in this. For example, selling a car, a used car, they have to avoid any kind of gharar, of uncertainty about the characteristics and the condition of that particular car that they're selling. And I already have, of course, mentioned that Islamic economics and Islamic finance is based on real economic activity. That means that if we're talking from the Islamic banking sector, is that if they want to make money, if they want to make some profit, if they want to, be commercially strong, is they have to participate in real economic activity. That means not as a passive partner by only investing money without, or actually it's not investing, actually they do with borrowing money. They are not allowed to borrow money only without any risk and get riba in return. They have to invest and take a certain risk in that project, as I clarified earlier. And the last thing, which is in line, of course, is that everything that is financed in Islamic finance and every transaction a Muslim does it must be ethical. So we are not allowed to finance haram things. We are not allowed to finance um, things as tobacco, alcohol, all those things. And of course, there's much more than that, but these are just a few examples. So these are the
Yeah.
five main principles.
Yeah, sure. I suppose a lot of this
Exactly.
really like there's so much that is involved in everyone's daily life, right? So how does one come to know the bare minimum that they need to, like you said, buy a car or uh, the basic transactions?
Well, first of all, there of course there are two layers or yeah, I can't call them stages, two layers of transactions or two perspectives that you have to look at. First of all, of course, is that we need to know what is halal. And I'm talking about the product itself, so that you know that what you're buying, that whether that's allowed or not. It's maybe the easiest one, but that is one first we have to ask ourselves: is what we're buying, in food or anything, is it halal? The second stage is when you're buying something, is how you're buying it. So if you're buying something cash, then basically, of course, there is not a problem at all. But when you're buying something, in any kind of financial construction, whether it is, buy now, pay later, or by any other finance structure, at a shop, you can buy, for example, installments, etc. Then things get a bit more complicated. Now, the basic rule, we're talking, I think, here mostly to the people in the West, so let's say UK, America, Western Europe, that most of these products are not Sharia compliant. So if you are buying a smartphone and say, yeah, it's 0% interest, it doesn't mean that if they say 0% interest, there's no interest involved. And even if you are not paying interest, but there's interest involved in the transaction between that party and the seller of your iPhone, for example, and you're selecting that option, you're still an active partner in that interest transaction. So for all the brothers and sisters who are listening, and you have any doubt when you want to make a big purchase as a car or anything else, is that you ask one of the students of knowledge about that product before you put your signature under it.
Exactly. Okay. I'm just gonna, because I think Matt may be having some issues, so I'm gonna just give us the ayah or the hadith of the day or the episode, as it were. So hopefully, we can build upon this and then go into a fruitful discussion in Eric's field, inshallah. But the hadith that I thought fit this episode was one that's in Sunan Nasa'i. It's Sahih by Sheikh Al-Albani. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the one who earns unlawful wealth and then gives in charity, it will not be accepted from him. And if he spends from it, there will be no blessing in it. And if he leaves it behind when he dies, it will be his provision in the fire. Subhanallah. So, I mean, this hadith, it kind of shows the weight of unlawful wealth or haram money, however that's earned, etc. And I wanted to ask, obviously, as a revert, and obviously we discussed previously how people may be working in haram environments before they become Muslim. They may be having some kind of haram wealth. When one becomes Muslim, Eric, how does one deal with that wealth? That one, maybe they were selling alcohol, they had a shop, or maybe they were selling music, or maybe they were involved in riba transactions and interest and all these things. They've become Muslim now, and however big or small the amount of money they have, how should they go about and deal with that going forward?
Yes, well, this is absolutely a very important question, of course, that a lot of, especially new Muslims, face. Alhamdulillah, first, I'll give you a general let's say dalil and evidence from the Quran, and after that maybe more specific. But first of all, alhamdulillah, when somebody becomes a Muslim, alhamdulillah, all his previous sins and everything is forgiven. So when somebody makes the shahada, then from that point he is a Muslim, and from that point his deeds will count, especially when it comes to halal and haram, because from that moment he is obliged to follow the Sharia. So when it comes to things that happened to the past, especially when it comes to wealth, alhamdulillah, he is not forced, or he is not obligatory upon him to let's say give the money away or do anything with it. It is still, alhamdulillah, his wealth. That's a very important point here that we're talking about. And I think maybe we can just say it, all right, also maybe in English, all right. In Surah Al-Baqarah, in the verse 275, is also stated, so a part of the ayah. So whoever has received an admission from his Lord and desists may have what's past, and his affair rests with Allah. It's but whoever returns to dealing in interest or usury, so that's basically the riba part we're talking about, or haram income, those are the companions of the fire, and they will abide eternally therein. The scholars, as for example Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, has given explanation actually to this ayat, and that is that when somebody has done anything haram in the past, also when it comes to obtaining wealth from business or any other sort of income which is not Sharia compliant, then that is masalaf. This is what happened in the past, and he is not obliged to do anything with that. Alhamdulillah. Nevertheless, but this is my personal view there, is that of course it does not withhold the brother, of course, to give sadaqah, but he's not obliged to. But if he feels like, I would like, to clean myself and to give something of this wealth, fi sabilillah, that of course is a great deed. But there's a very big difference between something that's mustahab, which is strongly recommended in Islam, and something that is compulsory. Wallahu a'lam.
Is it different if the wealth is like from someone else?
Do you mean that maybe he inherited the money?
Theft,
Is that what you mean?
Like theft.
I think he's talking about theft. So, for example, someone, they did a bank heist or something before they were Muslim.
Yes.
All right.
Not a bank heist, but someone else's money or car or property.
Yeah, when it's the point, of course, there is that now al-haq bani Adam, now another right of somebody in this earth, right? Somebody on this earth is directly associated with his wealth that he's having, and also that he knows without any uncertainty that who it belongs to. So, I think that's very clear. Let's give an extreme example. 1 year ago, somebody stole a car, for example, from somebody, a family member or a friend or anyone, but he knows exactly what it is. Then, of course, in that case, he should give it back to the person that it belongs to. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to, let's say, for example, somebody had, as you mentioned, Karl, I think it was you or maybe Abdul Karim, that when you, for example, had haram business, for example, or you had a liquor store or anything of that, then it's a different case. Wallahu alam.
Yeah. So the next question that I would have is, obviously what is common, specifically in the UK. I'm not really sure. I think in Holland, for example, they have a different system. But in the UK, I'm sure in America and places, they obviously have this thing that's very popular amongst young people of having, university loans that have some level of interest. But in general, people may have embraced Islam and they may have things like mortgages, or they may have credit card debt from, banks in the West that are clearly based upon interest. or they have a loan to someone, or any kind of loan agreement that has clear-cut interest in, has that. I have this agreement. I've now become Muslim, but I've still got that agreement and I still have these payments to make. How would one navigate that as a new Muslim?
Yes. Thank you, brother, for this question. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not, subhanAllah, put a burden on ourselves more than we can bear. So as we say, of course, the very well-known ayah, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. So it's very important for a Muslim to know that he abides to the Sharia within the limitations of his situation and his personal situation. So when it comes to have financial debts with interest components or anything of the sort, then the general advice here is that he needs to do everything, well, look, absolutely everything within, of course, no doubt, halal means to get rid of these loans. So, for example, if somebody has, for example, £20,000 study or education debt, for example, from his university, and he's paying an interest percentage on that every month, then I would say try with his personal capabilities, but also maybe in the community, his friends, his family, to get that money and to pay it off directly to that institution, whether it is the education institution, whether it's the UK government or any government, whether it is a credit card company, because of course this answer that I'm giving now is general, is try to pay it off as soon as possible to get rid of this interest contract, and then to pay the people that helped him to pay them off within his capabilities. Wallahu alam.
Interesting. I just thought I'd add to that as well. Subhanallah, and obviously, along the way, people should make dua, of course, for Allah to make these things easy and to aid him in paying it off. But I seem to remember perhaps a couple of brothers, they asked concerning, for example, the student debt. And I think amongst the scholars, there were a few different opinions in terms of, some say, you just pay it off even with the interest, or you pay off the non-interest part of the debt. There's difference of opinions. And this brother, I think he actually called up whatever institution he owed the money to for this student loan and said to them, look, I have the money available now, but I'm not going to pay the interest. I have the full amount to repay the loan. Let me pay the loan now. And they actually accepted. I don't know if there was a back and forth, but they actually accepted from him and said, okay, pay up this full amount and we'll accept it and we'll cancel off all your debt. So sometimes we think like, oh, maybe, things are impossible, or, they won't work. But, with dua and taking the asbab and actually negotiating with some of these institutions, these things can sometimes be negotiated. Yeah,
definitely. That's actually also what I was pointing to. Exactly what you said, Abdul Karim. In this case, what I tried to say was, try to get that liquidity, try to get the money from your own social network, from your own people around you. Inshallah ta'ala, there are brothers and people to help you, especially if you're a revert, and inshallah ta'ala also if you're not a revert. Get that money and then directly address either the credit card company or any other institution. Say like, look, I have it cash here right now. I can transfer it now under the condition that any other further interest components or anything else will be stopped and cancelled. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, even just to add like a bit more of a personal story, when I became Muslim, I had a bank loan, I think of around £10,000 or something like that. So quite like a substantial, for me at the time, I was quite young. So it was quite a substantial amount of money. And there was actually a brother who actually helped me to pay off that debt. And then I owed him the money, just as you're saying in this example. And then, alhamdulillah, Allah actually made it easy for me over the years I paid it off like quite some time ago to actually pay back the brother, you know. So may Allah
Allah
reward the
barik.
brother for that.
Jazakallah
But that,
khairan.
you know, these are examples of exactly what you're talking about. So I just
Allah
thought
barik.
that may be beneficial, you know, and like I said as well, constantly making dua for Allah to make it easy. In there's so many things that along that journey, Allah suddenly opened these doors that made it very easy for me to pay the brother back. So, you know, if you try to look for the khair, inshallah, Allah will make a way, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean
The
And
other
that's good, that one, because I many times I've seen that it's suggested offer to pay back just the the sum of the loan without interest, and this is the first time I've been made aware of people actually achieving it. So yeah, just okay for sharing.
inshallah.
the other thing, I mean, it's also to do with them banks and stuff. But obviously, a lot of these banks in the West as well, they're all kind of almost forced interest upon you. So in these kind of situations, Eric, what would one do when you know, interest is being added or accumulated into a bank account, and you don't want that interest as a
Yeah,
Muslim?
well, that's a very good question. Exactly. We receive even interest or receive, any kind of financial thing that is not, as we say, halal, or it's not Islamic compliant. Two things. First of all, we should really strive and do our best to find a bank that is, not offering interest on your account. There are banks that say we will never pay you any either dividend or interest or whatsoever. So at least in some parts of the world, it's there. So that's a very important point. Try to get an account somewhere where it's clearly stipulated you will not receive any interest on that account. Now, the second point is, if you're a Muslim and you receive interest, then that is, of course, haram. So that money that you have received is not halal. So what you don't what you have to do in that case, as many scholars have stated, is that you also don't give it to a person in need, but you have to give it to the public. So that means basically, in our case, in UK, bring it to the masjid, donate it. No, you're actually not donating it, to be honest, but you transfer it. Let me just say, like, it's not a donation, because it's not voluntarily that you're doing this. You have to do this, right? So you just try to get rid of the money by transferring it to a public benefit. So in our case, it probably would be a masjid, for example, without having the intention that it's not sadaqah. You'll not get rewarded for it. It's just cleansing actually your wealth. That's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's right what you said, because I the one UK account that I still have, they haven't paid me interest for, you know, the last years, because I specifically chose to them. I said, give me an account that doesn't accrue any interest, and they put me on, I don't know what is the name of the account or whatever, but it's never had interest. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
It's a good point about finding a specific bank that doesn't deal in those things, though, because even if we don't get interest ourselves, if our money's in that bank account, the thing that bank uses it for is to finance their other operations, isn't it? So better to not be a facilitator of that and be in a bank that isn't going to use your money for that purpose.
If I can say something, Karl, because actually, Marshall, you raised a very interesting topic there, which is a very big topic and also a bit outside of the topic of this podcast of today. But I got many questions now, particularly after what's happening, of course, in Gaza, is that Muslims start to become more and more aware of their economic and their economic participation in the West, and how their taxes and everything they pay and everything that happens, how that participates or facilitates all these cruel things that are happening against the Muslims in the world. So that's, of course, outside the topic, but it's a part of also having money, right, in the conventional banking industry, whether you receive interest for it or not. You cannot receive interest, okay, alhamdulillah, but still your money is used to finance other things. So it's always something to be aware of. Wallahu alam.
Yeah. I mean that it kind of sorry, just to continue on that point, it kind of raises the idea of there is also a gray area in terms of, we know there's things like, okay, let's say gambling, alcohol, and certain things that we wouldn't want to be invested in, but then there's also things like you mentioned, weapons companies, or like certain institutions and things like this. And I mean, this can kind of maybe I can ask you a question as well, in terms of how can I ensure that my income is halal, whether that is via work and working for someone, or whether that's also by investing in, companies or businesses, etc. So if I want to be more entrepreneurial, or I want to be, working a 9 to 5 or whatever it is, how can I do my best to ensure that that income is halal and I avoid these kind of haram elements and even these gray areas?
This is a very essential, a very important question. I even think that even that question alone can already be, mashallah, another episode, because it's a very big topic, mashallah. When we talk about being an employee, because of course there are two situations, all right? Let's make it two. Let's say either you're an employee or you are an entrepreneur dash investor, right? When we talk about being by working somewhere, of course there are many aspects that make a job, that makes a job, Sharia compliant or Islamically seen all right or not. First of all, of course, is the core of your work itself. So what you are doing. So, I mean, that's of course a very clear thing, but you're not going to work in a cafe, for example, and serving people alcohol and stuff. I mean, that's of course an extreme example. But we first have to see, like, what we're doing is, okay, if I am working in the medical field, I am not allowed to see or to touch, for example, the other sex, except if it is, of course, a very high necessity or emergency case. But other than that, I should try to avoid things like that. So there are so many, brothers, so many aspects there that a Muslim has to be aware of. But at the same time, it's not very difficult, because we know, for example, let's say we talk about the other sex, we know that alhamdulillah, women's wearing hijab. So when we know that the woman is wearing hijab, then we also know that, of course, we have to try as far as we can not to mix with the other sex, for example, if we can, and to work in sectors, right? If a Muslim asks me, where should I work? I would say, try to work, for example, in a place where there is, the less mixing, between the sexes, for example. That's a very important point, for example, to start with. But there are many other topics to talk about as well. When we talk about investing, that becomes, there's also two layers there. First, of course, it's very clear that in what you're investing. Also, that people know you're not going to invest in a company that is, making movies, or you're not going to invest in Amazon Prime, or you're going to invest in Disney or whatsoever. That's, of course, very important, the industry. And the second layer there is the financial situation of a company, but that's more sophisticated. But we are not allowed as a Muslim to invest in companies which have, for example, a capital which is, for example, financed by interest loans. But I don't think if I can explain it just that easily in just an episode like this. It requires a lot of explanation there. But that's why I want to say, if people want to invest money, there are, for example, the Dow Jones Islamic Index in New York, for example. They have a certain screen, so that is kind of a bit safe. And there's also an S&P Islamic Index. So there are ways to invest, and they are broadly seen Sharia compliant. But as I said before earlier in the episode, before you do something like that, especially people are going to invest, and you have a product in front of you, bring it to one of the students of knowledge and get a definite fatwa, inshallah ta'ala.
And that interest-based capital is so common in the
Absolutely.
West. I mean, I remember most of the businesses I worked for when I was in the UK, they treated it like rent. You know, it's like we've got a 50 million loan. We pay the interest on it every month. There's no intention to ever pay it back. It's just that 50 million of funding is getting the interest every month. It's just like rent to them. That's how they see it anyway when they justify it. But
Yeah.
yes, it's so common.
When you invest in a company, well said, Karl. Absolutely, that's unfortunately the reality, and they're also a little bit forced to, actually, by the financial system,
Okay.
of course, right? So it is that it is, but okay. But regardless of that, what I want to add to that is we have to understand, we as Muslims, that when we invest in a company, we become a part of that company, of course, right? You're owning stocks at the end of the day, and therefore
Yeah.
you're a part of the company, and therefore you're also responsible for your participation in what they're doing from A
Sure.
to Z. So that gives a lot of limitations, but it's still very, very relevant. So we have to be very careful there.
What like, because I was very interested to hear that. I've never really looked that deeply into stocks and stuff, so I've never really heard about this Islamic Dow Jones and the S&P. I've obviously heard of S&P 500, but I never heard of S&P Islamic Index, so that was quite interesting. But I mean, I remember one brother was mentioning, aside from the whole interest aspect, which, like we said, is you know, unavoidable in many of these Western kind of companies, huge businesses. But let's say you have another, you know, aside from that, let's say you had a company that didn't have the interest or something, or was a company like Apple, where you could say that the core business to some extent is like selling phones or, you know, devices, which is permissible. But then also you have the App Store, and within the App Store, there's many permissible things, but then there's also haram things. There's, you know, apps that encourage dating, or there's apps that perhaps encourage gambling and these kind of things. So when it's, and obviously Apple, although it's not the maker of those applications, it's profiting off those applications, and it's kind of, you know, a platform allowing it. So I mean, it would be one thing being an entrepreneur and creating your own app, perhaps, but actually owning the stock of Apple, is that something that one would have to consider?
For sure, there is a responsibility there for the investor there to be sure, or at least to know exactly what that company is doing, so that due diligence must be there. But when it comes to there's a different opinion, actually, in this matter. But there is let's say, an amount or a percentage in a business. For example, let's say the business is 95% Sharia compliant, or the business is 98% Sharia compliant in its core. Then there are views that it's allowed to invest in these companies. And it depends also. It also depends also. Like, there's so many insights in this topic, and maybe I can give you a very, very, very simplified example there of somebody who is selling, for example, let's say grapes, or somebody who's selling produce. Right now, grapes are, of course, mashallah, a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's healthy, and it's a great product to sell. But there always might be a possibility that someone, especially if you don't know, might use it to make wine. The same thing with a smartphone, in essence. First, when we go to the smartphone itself, what is the customer going to do with that product? That is outside of the scope of outside the responsibility of the Muslim. Now, the third stage was what you said, is that the product is Sharia compliant. There's nothing wrong with that, with a smartphone, in essence, the product itself. But even in the Apple Store, as you said, there might be some apps or etc. that are sold which might not be Sharia compliant. Then it should be investigated, like, what is that percentage? How significant is that? And then it should also be propose probably to a scholar like what to say about that. But normally we talk about extremely a minor percentage of the whole. Wallahu alam.
Okay. We do have a question. I'm not sure exactly what they mean, Joe, but I think they're talking, this gentleman Joe, he's asking about I think he's asking about benefit money. So money, for example, in the UK that for example, they have children, they get child benefits from the government, or they're not unemployed and they're, not working. So the government gives them some form of benefit. And I'm thinking they're asking, where does that money come from? Don't really get the question, but I think the money is coming from the government. It's obviously coming from the British government if you're in the UK, or the Dutch government if you're there, and maybe they're questioning the source of those funds. Is that permissible? Because obviously, how is the government obtaining that money? Are they obtaining it through tax? Is it halal? Is it haram? So do you have any insight in that regard?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. This is a great question. And the topic is even bigger than that, because now we're talking about support from the government, for example. But also, for example, if somebody gives you a gift, right? But you're not 100% sure of the money that was used to buy that gift is halal, right? It's a similar question. Alhamdulillah, in this case, Alhamdulillah, we're not asked upon that. That is without our control. And as long as you are sure that, or you can assume, let me say it like that the money is not 100% haram, so you're like you know that it's not, for example, a stolen car from your neighbor, for example, then Alhamdulillah, you're not asked upon that. You'll not be asked, inshallah ta'ala, about that and that money that you got. Especially, for example, also when you get a gift from someone, you get some financial support from brothers. You also, of course, don't know how they earned that money, but you're also not asked upon that. You're not responsible to that level. Lillahi alhamd.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Hopefully, Joe, that answered your question there. Karl, have you? I think we're going to try to wrap up the conversation there. I mean, the last question I had is in regards to a bit of a controversial one, but in terms of insurance. So a lot of the countries around the world insurance. For example, even in some of the Muslim countries, car insurance, you have to have it. In some countries where they have private medical care, medical insurance, you have to have it or it's forced upon you. So what's the situation there? How must a Muslim deal with this thing? Should they abandon car insurance and end up getting in trouble with the law, or what should they do?
Yes, this is also a very important topic, because I think all of us, or especially people who are living in the West, are or have to deal with any kind of insurance, whether it's medical insurance or car insurance. Now, first of all, to understand, let's go back to the core, and that is insurance. And what's insurance? To keep it short, all the insurance offered in a country like the UK or in the West, they're all, as we say, conventional insurances, or another word, commercial insurances. In essence, all these insurance policies are haram for many reasons. One of them is the gharar, so the uncertainty, because you're paying an amount, and it's on at the point that at the moment that you sign a contract, or that you're paying your premiums, you don't know whether you get that money back, or you get it later, or you get more, or you get less. It's a kind of gambling. That's basically the nature of an insurance, of a commercial insurance. So that is the basic understanding, that we should try to avoid any kind of commercial insurance in our lives. Now, the question here is, if we are forced to, for example, like in UK, I suppose as well, that you at least need to have a third-party insurance. Is that correct, Abdul Karim?
Yeah, that's right.
Cars,
In the UK, yeah, you need third party,
right? Yeah, so you have third party, then you have another one which has some other benefits, and you have, of course, the full coverage. Now, it is very clear that you're only allowed to take the third party coverage one, because this is compulsory by the government. You get penalized if you don't have one, or you get another deep trouble. So when you're forced by the rulers of the country that you're living in, then inshallah ta'ala, there's nothing you can do about it, and you should you have that insurance. Now, when it comes to in UK, that's slightly different, as I've understood. But in Holland, for example, you have also a compulsory health insurance, which is semi-government. So it means that you pay premiums, and then by these premiums, you're allowed to go to governmental hospitals. And of course, in essence, also here, we're still talking about a commercial insurance, and it is with difficulty possible not to take that insurance. But here I have to step in, because a very big scholar, Sheikh Suleiman Muslimullah Ruhaili, one of the biggest scholars in fiqh in Medina, in Saudi Arabia at the moment, a very, very famous scholar, also, alhamdulillah, visited UK many times and Holland, and is well known for his knowledge. He was asked about having a health insurance in the West, because especially, like, say, UK, or now UK maybe not, but in Holland, for example, healthcare is so extremely expensive that it goes beyond the financial capabilities of a normal family or normal person, that it will result in not getting healthcare in case it's needed. And in that case, the Sheikh Hafidullah, may Allah preserve him, said that in that case, it is allowed to have a health insurance, the one that, of course, is enforced by the government, and nothing more than that. Wallahu alam.
What I mean, just on this similar kind of topic, what about, there's some, institutions, let's say even from like a Muslim country or something, where you might have, it could be a bank card, even some debit cards do it now, not necessarily credit cards, but some bank cards, or some, memberships for, like, let's say, airlines or stuff like this. They offer this kind of complimentary insurance where you don't actually pay anything, and then they're telling you, we're going to give you a travel insurance, or we're going to give you health insurance. So you're not actually paying anything, but you're provided with it. What's then, how should one deal with that? Is that then allowed to then go and make claims upon that, or do you have to kind of look more into the business that insurance company runs?
That's a beautiful question as well, Barakallahu Fik. Now, first of all, when some body or an organization or whatever, for example, Visa or any other credit card company, whatever, is offering you a coverage to say, like, well, if something happens with you on the road, or something happens when you're traveling, or anything of the sort, then we provide you a kind of coverage. In this case, as you're not paying premiums, and it is not, as we say, al-aqd with that, it's not a contract in which they are obliged to give you anything, and you are also not obliged to pay them anything. It's more like an offer from one side. In that case, that somebody could have a look, of course, in what that company offers and what are the conditions, etc. But in essence, if it's just provided, then somebody, in my opinion, in my knowledge, is allowed to take it, because there's no the main problem that we have in insurance is twofold. The first one is riba, so is that you're paying money and you get more or less back on the short or long term. So that's the interest part, which is absolutely haram. The second part is uncertainty. You're paying haram, you're paying money, and you don't know yet what you're getting back. Now, as you can see, brothers, is that both of these points are eliminated. They're not available. They're not present in this stage because you're basically not paying anything. So al-asl fi al-ashya al-ibaha, as we say in Arabic, there's a very important legal maxim in Islamic fiqh, which states that everything in essence is permissible unless it's proven otherwise.
Okay, Jazakallah
Wallahu
khair.
alam. Wa iyyak, akhi.
Very fruitful conversation. I hate to cut it short, but I don't want the episode to run on too long, inshallah. So I hope that we will have Eric back as well in the future to, do some more on these topics, and hopefully we can get some other questions and insights from people as well, inshallah.
Barakallahu feek.
Brothers, I in this section, which is kind of like the Revert news and viewers' contributions, I wanted to mention there's been a Revert brother who's recently passed away just this week, who went by the name Sherman Witterberg or Ja'far. He passed away in his home in Jubail this week. So may Allah have mercy on him and make it easy for his family. And I wanted to encourage people as well to listen to a video online where he talks about his conversion to Islam. This brother, mashallah, Allahumma barak, he was, and may Allah forgive him, reward him. He was an ex-model and actor who I think was actually, at quite a high level in his career. And he gave that all up and became a Muslim. And he went, actually, I believe he studied in Yemen, and he was studying in Saudi and working in Saudi Arabia for many years. And I just wanted to play, if I can, just a very short clip of the video for the viewers, and then, encourage everyone to make dua for the brother and his family, inshallah. So let me just share this one, if I can.
My soul was searching for. So then the khutbah was going to begin, and then the imam, basically, he said, we have a young brother in here who want to take shahada. So I said, nah, brother, I'm just watching, brother. I'm just watching. And, I got nervous. And then one of the brothers, I guess he was aware of the shaitan on me and whispering to me. So he said, yeah, brother, come here. I'm going to show you how to clean yourself spiritually. So he took me to the wudu station, and I made wudu. And literally, I felt fresh. I felt like something that was on me, and the fright was gone, because the brother said to me, he said, honestly, brother, he said, this is an opportunity in a lifetime. He said, now, think about this logically. He said, think about it. You've been invited to the house of your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this is one proof against you on the day of judgment. He said, I'm going to cut to the point. He said, I don't have a lot of Islamic knowledge. He said, but I'm going to tell you the truth. He said, Allah invited you in his house. Now, if you leave out of here and you get killed, and it's the cut of Allah that you die without saying your shahada, now you have all this evidence against you, and you're going to be in a fire forever. And the fact that he came at me, coming from the dunya, I said, wow, ain't nobody never said nothing like that to me. And it was so real, because we all hear about the fire. We all know that it's going to be a time when you're going to have to give your life to your Lord. So when he said that to me, I said, you know what? I have an option. I could walk out of here and I could come back tomorrow, or I can just take my shahada, and I know I got a brain. So from this day on, once I take my shahada, I'm going to study Islam, and I'm going to make sure it's the truth, but I'm not going to risk the fact my soul being in the hellfire forever by leaving and dying. So what happened was, the khutbah was ending, and he was about to pray. Then he said, brother, he said, wait, you're going to take shahada right now. So then I took my shahada in front of everybody. So he said, alhamdulillah, you got about 300 to 400 witnesses, that's going to testify on the day of judgment that you testify, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Alhamdulillah. So I took my shahada, and I made my first salat in the first rank. And everybody, the brother next to me started hugging me, and he was crying, and I started crying. And it was so beautiful. I prayed. And from that day on, that Jummah, I prayed Fajr the next morning. And I've been praying ever since then, alhamdulillah. And I've been in the masjid. I took about a month and a half off of work, and I began to study Islam. And Allah guided me to the haqq. Allah guided me to the people of the sunnah, the people of the kitab al sunnah, and the people of the book. So alhamdulillah, the people of the Quran who follow the Quran and the sunnah, Allah guided me. Initially, you go through your trials and tribulations before you don't know that there's different sects and these things and the like of that in Islam. But Allah guided me to the haqq, and since then I've been studying.
Alhamdulillah. So I thought that was a beautiful clip, and I posted the thing on our Instagram as well. If you type in the brother's name as well, Sherman Wittenberg Ja'far on YouTube. I forget the name of the channel that has his whole. There's a full 1 hour, but an amazing brother. I'd never met the brother personally myself, but there's a few of the brothers that I know who, for example, were even taught Arabic by him and were taught different things. And I think that clip really highlighted that, from the get-go, after he became Muslim, he had this thirst and this this desire to really learn the religion of Islam and spread it. So, may Allah reward him. May Allah make all his family's affairs easy and, raise his rank. So on a slightly lighter note, or on a more traditional note for the Revert Corner, we go now to the word association, Eric. So please get ready, Eric. This is where we give our guests and our co-hosts, and sometimes hosts as well, but they haven't brought the words yet, Karl. So you need to up your game.
I've got them for you today. I'm ready.
Oh, you've got one for me. Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. So let me give one to you and Eric, and then you can fire at me. This is great. So Eric, the first one I'm going to give to you as the guest, and the first word. So just give your quickest reaction, your first thought to it. The word is charity.
Charity is a responsibility for all of us as Muslims to spend on the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it's mentioned in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah.
Jazakallah khair. Karl, I have for you debt.
Debt?
Yes.
Burden.
Burden, yes. I'll go back to Eric. Eric, I have savings. Oh, wait. Come to me in a second. Savings, Eric.
Future.
Future. All right, Karl, hit me.
Okay, here we go. Gold.
Gold. Bitcoin.
Eh? Okay.
Is that all you got? Come on, I thought you'd have another one.
I've got another one. I've got another one.
Give one to Eric. Give one to Eric.
Okay, here we go. Retirement.
Time for worship.
MashaAllah, very nice.
Allahumma. What about Eric? I have another one for you, just to put you on the spot there. Profit sharing.
Oh.
Islamic equality.
Solid. Karl, you got any more? Come on, I'm ready. I've got one for you then. I've got one for you then. Business ethics.
Business ethics. What's right?
What's right? Yeah. What about same one to Eric? Business ethics.
The core principle of Islamic entrepreneurship.
Excellent. So we'll wrap up there. That was a nice one to wrap it up with. We're hopefully going to have a couple of episodes in the next few episodes on Ramadan. And then hopefully after Ramadan, I think it would be good to get you back to do maybe a deeper dive on some of these issues as well. Inshallah.
Inshallah. I'm looking forward to it, inshallah.
Yeah. So we'll have to get Matt as well. Matt was meant to be here today, but unfortunately, I think he may have had some technical issues. But such is with these things. قدر الله ما شاء فعل. But inshallah, he'll be here for the next one. We've got some great guests coming up in the next few episodes. Like I said, hopefully we'll be doing some episodes on Ramadan. And, as this is fast approaching, I think it's less than 40 days now, right? It's about 35 days or so.
Much less than 40 days, yeah, just over 30.
Yeah, 35, I think. It's like the 1st of March, right? Officially, I think. 1st of March, maybe, or yeah.
Around then, yeah.
Well, it's 25th of Rajab now, right? So, yeah.
Just a quick before we end then, what would be your advice, Eric, for, perhaps some new Muslims? It's going to be their first Ramadan. What's kind of like, things that they should try to focus on, especially if they're very new Muslim, it's their first time in Ramadan?
What should they focus on? First of all, is that they first need to have the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that everything will be fine. The first thing that I talk about myself, I was afraid, like, oh man, I can't, during normal days, I can't even, make it until 1 p.m. without having breakfast. But when you're fasting, it's totally different. That's number one. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for support, and it will be very easy for you, inshallah ta'ala. Point two is that a person should try, inshallah, to find Muslims around him to break the fast with. So it's very important for a Muslim, especially for men, of course, but also for sisters, that, maybe they can go to the masjid, because they deserve to have, to experience that very special moment of doing iftar together, and after that doing tarawih. So they should not be ashamed of looking for people to have that moment with. Those are basically my 2 cents. Barakallahu fik.
Jazakallah khair. Anything to add there, Karl?
A couple of things, yeah. I think one of the things many scholars have said in the past is that, when you fast, it's just one meal's been made early and another meal's been made late. So, your breakfast is early and your dinner's late. So that side of things, inshallah, you'll have no issue with, no matter who you are. But I'd say that, focus on the Quran as much as possible. If I remember my first Ramadan, not my first one, but my second one, I learnt the Arabic letters just a month or so before Ramadan. And alhamdulillah, I was able to complete one reading of the Quran, very, stumbling on the words and finding a lot of, not difficulty, but challenge, and got that done in one Ramadan. And of course, once you've done that once, then, it becomes easier and easier every time. So focus on the Quran. Don't worry too much about the early breakfast and the late dinner.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Appreciate it, brothers. Jazakallah khair. It was a fantastic episode, and we hope to see you next time. And Eric, Jazakallah khair for joining us. Hopefully, we will get a part 2 of Money Matters. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.